Right, yes, while we were all having a lovely little Christmas season, it turns out there was more movie news going on in the background, and we haven't really spoken too much about the business side of the industry as much. You know, usually it's just general reviews and opinions and some production details. But over the last couple of weeks, when everyone else has been enjoying their time, some CEO and mayor somewhere has been doing some real work to pseudo-confirm the idea of, yes, a brand new Universal theme park placed in the UK. Now, this news is in the early days, but it's not just a leak and some documents saying that it's going on. This is starting. Now, there are still all sorts of hurdles they need to get over, and so there's very much a chance that this will be dilapidated and deleted later down the line, but it's the most progress we've seen so far, and there's a lot of very exciting elements that could come together for this new Universal presence. So come join me as I tell you all the details that are confirmed, where things can go from here, and maybe how things could roll out in either direction of the timeline of whether it actually gets made or not. So yes, first things first, Universal has a whole set of theme parks meant to be the kind of rival to Disneyland and Disney World. You know, it's the movie stuff that's not under the Disney monopoly umbrella. And they've been doing all sorts of new expansions ever since lockdown, creating all sorts of new parks and attractions since 2020, with new attractions in their presence both in the US and in Japan, as well as creating a whole brand new park in Beijing in 2021, as well as future plans for Florida in 2025, as well as a couple minor projects like the one set in Texas and Las Vegas. And this would be the very first Universal theme park set in the UK. Just another one of the regions they haven't fully locked down onto yet. Now, based off of what they've done in the past, what they've said they want to do with their current presence, and how things could roll out in the future, let's go through all the details piece by piece. So first things first, coming from a person who is actually from the UK, I can give you a little bit of a rundown about the region it's going to. This potential theme park is set to be placed in Bedfordshire. Now, you may not know about it very much. There are lines like it's 25 minutes away from Milton Keynes, but you probably won't really understand that. It's just a bit north of London. I've been there once because my ex used to live there. I don't rate it personally, but you know, that I might be a bit biased. And the reason people say that it is confirmed to be here is that Universal have officially bought acres and acres of land in this area, with the Comcast Corporation purchasing 480 acres, covering land on either side of Manor Road and Kempston Harwick Station. Here it is on a map. It's a place, you know? Now, other details about this location in England that you can take on, but I don't know if it will really pay much attention to you, is it's close to Luton Airport, which is the bad London airport to the north, as well as being close to the M1, which is literally motorway 1. You know, it's got good connections. Now, the important detail is the fact that more than 50% of the UK population is within 2 hours of this place. That is because it is just 45 minutes away from London, and we have all sorts of train transport. For example, at this location, there is the Thameslink train, which for me personally is practically direct to there, connecting age-old Bedford all the way down south to Brighton, which is where me and a lot of other YouTubers are. Not to mention that just goes all the way through London, which is the epicenter of the population here. I don't actually know if 50% of the UK population is correct. It's probably 50% of the English population, since I'm pretty sure Scotland and Ireland have some pretty big populations, and they ain't 2 hours away. But even still, it's very much an epicenter location for a good chunk of this island. Even if you're at another city way off to the west, Bristol, that's still about 2 hours away. And though I could tell you about other facts about the location, it used to house famous brickworks over there in Kempston Harwick, I won't. We'll skip all that, and let's get into the actual details of what Universal specifically can handle. For example, what kind of franchise presence would we expect to see from Universal? Well, they as well are quite a big monopolizing umbrella company, and they have all sorts of major productions and other studios under their wing. For example, all sorts of DreamWorks movies, all sorts of Illumination movies, and also things from other studios like Amblin Pictures. Basically, all the footage that is going on in this video are IPs covered by the Universal Pictures brand, so any of these are possible. And though I could list out things like Madagascar, Secret Life of Pets, Les Miserables, sure, Hot Fuzz, whatever, there is a little bit of funneling that is planning to go on with this UK production, as after all, from looking at their past theme parks, they do like to mold towards the cultures they are representing within. For example, in their Chinese park in Beijing, they have highlighted attractions such as Kung Fu Panda, whilst in Osaka, in Japan, they have a bigger Nintendo presence. So So the question would be, who would be the British equivalent of these extrapolations? Well, there is a handful of answers that could help piece things together. For example, there was already an idea for a London resort theme park that was later on cancelled, being placed in North Kent, which is like a terrible place to go to. Even still, back then, they wanted to go for a strand towards Wallace and Gromit, as well as Doctor Who. Both IPs of which are still up and running now, so could very well be a good shout. But there's other contenders as well. For example, when you think British IPs, what do you think of? Well, some others that I've heard that are up for debate include Paddington, since that is a very prevalent, but maybe a bit more niche British representative, as well as perhaps James Bond, being a pretty open and available franchise to jump off of. While you may have initially said that Harry Potter is a very good shout, it is quintessentially British and probably the most popular British IP going on at the moment, would that be fair to say? They have a couple of pitfalls in that regards. Because Harry Potter already has a theme park representative in Britain a little bit further away in Hertfordshire, and therefore it's very likely Universal wouldn't want to take away from the sales of other people in the region. Similarly, I've heard ideas of a Lord of the Rings representative. After all, they're still going with their current Amazon Prime series. Really, there's a good chunk of options they could go with. British do make things. One source even specifically said that the Universal Destinations and Experiences brand are aiming to replicate the success of other parks like Legoland, Thorpe Park and Alton Towers, which are all in the UK already, which remain extremely popular attractions. Makes a lot of sense, they want to do well, what a surprise. But there is also another pitfall when it comes to Britain theme parks: British weather, which Universal Pictures has already had to handle with their Beijing representative, as they also have pretty naff weather. So looking over to how that park handles things, what we come to find is that in Beijing, more attractions are indoors because of these weather concerns, rather than being these big outdoor roller coasters, and instead opting for more immersive rides and I guess VR experiences, which could very well be how it's formatted in the UK. And there's all sorts of franchises that can easily do with an immersive approach. Fast and Furious, Jurassic Park, you know, I mean, in a minute I'll list all the Universal Pictures productions in the world, so we'll get there, but they got a lot of options, you know. When you're 50% of the industry, you got a few options, you know? And even beyond all of that list, Universal in the past also likes to make deals with other movies to be represented at their theme parks, so even movies that are out of their range could very well make a presence. Now, say that this park was fully formatted, they do actually fully end up making it. Predictions put building completion being closer to 2030. So this is at least 7 years away, if even everything goes right. But there is some good markers that they really are interested in making it. Not only because they've already done that purchase to get all that land, but that wouldn't be the end of it. I mean, they've only disclosed that they've spent $271 million so far anyway, associated with the acquisition of land for potential theme park expansion opportunities in Q3. But from the mayor, they've quipped that in the future there could be potential upgrades that would take a lot more money, mentioning a £950 million road upgrade that would put Bedford at the centre of the universe. Presumably talking about Manor Road, you know, the one on the map there. But that's not been done yet. Hello again, it's me from the future. Thank you for making it halfway through this video. If you're interested in hearing more sort of business-y IRL events going on in movie news, I'd love you to let me know, or tell me suggestions of other funky things going on in the world. It's an avenue I could talk about more. Anyway, since you're this far in, do subscribe if you'd like to see more. Give us suggestions over in the YouTube comments or on our Discord, where I'm more likely to see it. And I'll let you get back to the main video now. Though this mayor of Bedford, Tom Wooten, has made a whole bunch of quotes saying that he's very much interested in it. The suggestion of a major business investment is of course positive. Nevertheless, these are early days and much detailed work is required before any decisions are made. We very much welcome and are excited by the interest from Universal and the immense potential for it to be transformative for the borough. We're committed to ensure that any plans align with the best interest of our residents. Because yes, obviously, this is going to be quite the hallmark of change for the local people. But reportedly, Universal have sent out letters to get essentially the consent from local residents or to hear any concerns before they make this massive investment. And though I'm sure there'll be all sorts of old people being like, I don't want a theme park nearby, you young kids, get out of my lawn. They don't say lawn, they are British. There is apparently a quote that Sky News found for a theme park fan who happens to live in Bedford. Gee, I wonder what his opinion will be. James Block says, even though it's extremely early days, as a lifelong Bedfordshire resident and theme park fan, it would be amazing news for the area, a massive boost to the local economy, and make Bedford the place to be. I want to see my ex again, man. People travel from all over the world to visit Universal Parks. Seeing Bedford listed along Hollywood, Orlando, Beijing, Osaka, and Singapore is amazing. And to be fair, I mean, I can at least agree I'd love to have a movie theme park on this island. One other thing to note is that though the new Texas theme park is just a little project called Universal Kids Resort, and similarly Las Vegas is a little one called Universal Horror Unleashed, this UK one would be set to be a full-sized, proper theme park. You know, there's a lot of acres they've taken. I can't imagine how much that must have cost. Actually, I can. The numbers are there. However, it's also rumored to not be a clone of any other parks. Or more specifically, not planning to clone any of the attractions to the Orlando presence, so as to not cannibalize international markets, which, yeah, makes a lot of sense. It would be original, nice, and new. You know, the best thing you can really ask for. Whilst also bringing thousands of jobs for local people, which is very true. There's all sorts of economic talk going on under the surface here. Similarly, there were directions they chose not to go. Milton Keynes was apparently a place they were initially thinking of. However, they rejected that as they found the land was too expensive in Milton Keynes. We do have a massive land problem here. With one Milton Keynes City Council source saying to the Citizen, land around Milton Keynes is too expensive for this sort of thing as it's all optimized for warehouse and logistics, and that's almost as expensive as housing land is right now. They chose where they have it as it's got Thameslink and it's gonna have new Wixham station for East-West Rail. Whereas the site only being a 50-minute drive away from Bedford's town centre also just makes a lot of things line up nicely. Still, though I've said all of these processes of how things could go, they are trying to ground expectations. I'm just personally on the mindset that this isn't going to be made, so I can avoid disappointment. But they have a handful of hurdles first, and they're taking things as safely as possible. Quoted specifically to the letters sent to residents over Christmas, we have, while we do own the land, we are only at the beginning of our feasibility study as part of our evaluation of potential sites. It may well, therefore, be many months before we decide whether to even proceed with the project. We plan to work closely with our local communities should we progress. We support Bedford's vision of becoming a prosperous place to live, work, and visit, and we take a proactive approach to partner with local communities and stakeholders, like Bedford Borough Council, when pursuing potential projects. They've created a website for residents to also share their opinions. They seem to be taking things as cautiously as possible, but they have already bought the land, so potentially it's as best that we've had so far. Now, with this park being somewhat around 7 years away in the future, you can't really look at future movies to work out what's going to be made, because we're not 7 years ahead of right now, obviously. But presumably, whatever new presence there is would get some presence in the theme park. If it appeared today, maybe there'd be an element of Oppenheimer, or Fast and Furious, or Despicable Me or something. But beyond that, other lists of things that the Universal Pictures own but could make something out of include Curious George, The Land Before Time, Back to the Future would be a pretty big one, as much as that is American. You got DreamWorks productions like The Bad Guys, The Boss Baby, Trolls, How to Train Your Dragon, Kung Fu Panda, Madagascar, Shrek and Sing, Despicable Me, Secret Life of Pets. I know that will be successful for the middle-aged mums of the UK. There are a lot of them. With the US getting a Super Nintendo expansion in one of their new theme parks, I wouldn't be surprised if, again, Super Mario of some sort makes an approach here, especially since it's also under the Illumination wing. I'd love that, honestly. Nintendo, please come to the UK. I am in a drought over here. Another big one on the British front could include Downton Abbey, which I hear is incredibly successful, as much as I'm not interested in it, as well as other little projects like Billy Elliot, that's notably British, Bridget Jones, Johnny English, if you want a bit of Rowan Atkinson, and even the Cornetto trilogy from Edgar Wright has incredibly British storytelling. Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, The World's End. I mean, I could see maybe a fake pub at the Universal Pictures, but I mean, there's literally, go out anywhere, you will find an actual pub every 30 seconds you walk in any direction, but sure. They are also the distributors behind Cats, which would be an awful idea, but yeah, you never know. I'd love to see a VR headset and the butthole cut. You've got a little bit of Yesterday for a little bit of that Beatles element, which could be a very interesting, immersive ride, I guess. Baby Driver, if we're still allowed to talk about that movie. Basically, anything Edgar Wright has produced has come under the Universal wing. Similarly, you've got Scott Pilgrim as well. The FNAF movie is under the Universal brand. Oh my god, can you imagine a FNAF ride? That is horrendous. Addams Family, Mamma Mia is a big one. All of the Dr. Seuss projects are under Universal, as well as got a little bit of Illumination presence there. Mr. Bean, again, for that Rowan Atkinson level. Sherlock Holmes is an incredibly British IP that I'm sure they could make somewhere, even if it's just merch. You got Jaws for some old school presence. And finally, as one other last little squeak, you have maybe Game of Thrones. Although they might might be locked behind Warner Brothers, so we'll see, but I see them as an incredibly British presence that would be amiss if it wasn't included. The idea of a Universal theme park that's actually within range of me sounds brilliant. I don't get that kind of luxury over here, and there is clearly a lot of potential with the British IPs that are underlining what they could go with. They've got some hurdles with the weather and the residents and whether they even want to make this at all, but considering they have failed to make some in the past, and there's also a lot of potential here, it could go either way. I'm not expecting this to be made, but I'm very excited nonetheless. Clearly the mayor of Bedford is, because they can finally put his tiny little town, with the only note being my ex lives there as their accolade, could finally get the accolade of being at the center of the universe and a major landmark for anyone going to London. And hey, it makes that one Bedfordshire resident who's also a theme park fan very happy as well. We'll just see if the cogs keep turning, this time 7 years later. Someone remind me in 7 years, because I'm sure it won't make it that far, so remind me that it failed in 7 years when I've long forgotten about this project. For now though, I'll end it off here. Universal Pictures has a presence at Hollywood, Orlando, Osaka, Beijing, Sentosa in Singapore, Las Vegas and Texas, and now possibly Britain as well. Or somewhat, anyway. Add on to the fact that we do at least have a Disneyland one train away over in France, in Paris, and maybe it's a good time to be a movie fan over here on this little island. But tell me your thoughts. Do you care because it's not on your island? Or are you a big fan because you are on this island? I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, my name's been Daz, you didn't really care, and I'll see you in a little bit.